Three.
Recording in progress.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of Miami Hurricanes Talk with Danny on Spotify. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. It definitely helps the channel tremendously, and you'll help the algorithm on there. If you feel you want to donate, you could do so via PayPal, Venmo, and Cash App. I will put all the links in the description, and you can help. It helps tremendously. Any tip is appreciated. Guest this week is Allie Peak Wilbur, a native of Tampa, Florida, graduate of Tampa Catholic. Uh, she's the co-host of the Peak to Pitt podcast since 2019. And I noticed a couple things on your background, Allie. Like you say, you're native of Tampa, a graduate of Tampa Catholic, a graduate of the University of Florida, and you're a third generation Florida Gator. Tell us about that a little bit.
I am. So my grandfather actually played football for the University of Florida. My dad played football for the University of Florida. And then my husband, Eric
Yes.
Wilbur, played football for the University of Florida. And my brother, Scott, actually played football for the University of
Both
Florida as
both
well.
the latter two played for Urban Meyer.
They
Won
did.
two national championships, 2006 husband Eric and 2008 brother Scott.
Yes, we always joke that we're the only family where a national championship ring isn't that special. My
Yeah.
my cousin Colin actually won it with Alabama in 2009
The
as
next year.
well. So, yeah, the next year. So we just always joke that
Yeah, I
your ring
was
didn't mean a whole
curious.
lot.
The one famous teammate, I think you know who I'm talking about. One Tim Tebow.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what was Tim Tebow like?
Tim is actually exactly like he is marketed to be. I mean, I can tell you a story. So Tim was a freshman when we were seniors, when
Yes.
we won the national title in
Chris Link
'06.
was the starter at the time.
Correct. And but I can recall a time I was friends with Tim's roommate in college. His roommate was Riley Cooper, who played at
Hmm.
CCC actually. Anyway,
Oh.
we were friends in college, and Riley had done something silly, and Tim was yelling at him, but he kept saying the word freak over and over again, and I couldn't understand follow the conversation, and afterwards I was like, is his nickname for you freak? And he's like, that is what he says instead of the F word, Allie. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yes,
But I
yes.
mean, he really is as sweet and kind and compassionate in person as he is on TV, as he's presented to be, which is really cool.
Yeah.
He is exactly who he says he
Good
is.
guy. Radio show host on iHeartRadio. How long were you there for that?
I was at iHeartRadio for years. My last broadcast would have been August 19th, 2014. And I only remember this because I had my first children August 20th, or 2014. I had my first children. So the day before was my last day doing my radio show.
Yeah. Another thing I see here that you were the owner and chief creativity officer for Crafty Mama Creations. Can you tell our audience about that? You've been there since
Yes.
2013.
I actually created a business making door hangers and
Hmm.
cornhole boards and stuff. When I had little kids at home, it was a good kind of creative outlet. I don't
Yes.
do it as much anymore because I do the current podcast that I do,
Yes.
which is a peek inside the Gators.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, since 2019, you've been host of Peak the Pit podcast. I noticed 20 years experience covering high school, college, and sports. You hosted the FHSAA Sports Report on the old Sunshine Network, which is now Valley Sports Now. Tell our audience about that.
I actually started with Time Warner even before
Yeah,
that. They
yeah, the
used
old Vision
to.
Cable, I remember also.
Yes, so Time Warner then became Bright House, then became Spectrum, and they used to have a show in Tampa about high school sports hosted by high school kids. So when
Wow.
I was at Tampa Catholic, I hosted it my junior and senior year of high school, which is then what parlayed into the high school sports show I hosted for Sun Sports.
Yes,
But it was neat, and I love high school athletics. I think that high
yes,
school athletics in the state of Florida are top notch. I wish we paid our coaches more.
yes.
Um, but it was really, really neat to travel to all of these different campuses across the state, hear these kids' stories, see their athleticism, watch these schools function. I have such respect for high school administrators and coaches, and I just think they do such great work.
Yeah, and you're the first student host of that on Bright House.
Mhm.
But your role model, I read here, was Gail Sirens. In fact, Gail Sirens was the first play-by-play
Mhm.
woman to call NFL games on a major network.
Yes, she was, and she was at a station in Tampa,
Yes,
WFLA,
yes,
and
I'm very well aware of that.
I got to intern with her in high school,
Wow.
and she and my dad went to college together, and so she was kind of always around as I was growing up, and she I think is a huge inspiration
Yes,
to many women that are
yes,
in sports.
great. One of the legends here in Tampa Bay journalism.
Yes.
Also I read you were the first woman in the southeastern United States to host your own solo sports talk show. Tell our audience about that, please, if you can.
Yeah, I originally was a part of an ensemble radio show, and the majority of the people that I was on with, we got an offer to move stations and
Hmm.
they all wanted to take it. And I didn't because we were on iHeart and I felt like
Hmm.
that was the better network. That was where the more opportunities were. So I went into the head of the radio station, who is a woman named Linda Bird.
Okay.
It was Clear Channel at the time. It became
Yeah.
iHeart during the course of my tenure there. And I told her, listen, this is what's happening. Everybody else is leaving. I don't want to leave. And she's like, so what do you want to do? And I said, I want to host it by myself. And she
Yeah.
said, all right, let's do it. And so I don't, you're probably familiar with the name Mike Bianchi. I
Yes.
hosted for the hour leading into his show.
Mm.
Um, it was drive time radio, 6 a.m. And it was fun. It was cool. It was neat. I love radio because you could put on a baggy sweatshirt and pajama
Yeah.
pants and go, and nobody cared because all they cared about was your sports
Yeah.
knowledge and
Yes.
opinions.
Yeah, and I noticed the first. I think of the legendary names of women that did it. Susan Wallman in New York, Nancy Donnellan in Tampa Bay for a long time. I mean, we need more women in sports. We need more women to do what you do. We
Well,
definitely
I
need that.
appreciate that. I think there should be more opportunities for anybody that's knowledgeable on the
Yes,
topic,
yes.
male or
Yeah,
female.
yeah, exactly. Now let's get to last week's game against LSU. DJ Lagway, 5 picks, 1 pick 6, 33 of 49, 287, 9 for 37 rushing. When I look at Florida's offense, I mean, listen, Florida's offense was moving the ball for a little while, but you're not going to win, Allie,
Hmm.
when you have when you get picked off 5 times
Yeah.
and 1 pick 6. What are they doing this week? Say, listen, what has to change? When you're facing a powerhouse in Miami, a team that's been steamrolling the last 2 games. How are they getting ready to face a team that has just been rolling?
I think for DJ Lagway, it's going back to basics. He missed so many reads in that game. He didn't set his feet before he threw the ball. He threw into triple and coverage on like
Yes.
mistakes that he doesn't normally make, mistakes that he has been over the course of his career, his lifetime, coached better than making. And I think he's got to get out of his own head and he's got to get back to basics because he is a better player than he showed us last
Yeah,
week.
absolutely. Yeah, Jalen Ball's a good runner, and DJ Lagway's not throwing 5 picks again. Let's be clear on
No.
that. We know we're going to have our hands full with a very good with a desperate Florida team that's coming to heart. That's really trying to save Billy Napier's job, which I'll get to in a minute. Jaden Ball, 10 for 46. Vernell Brown, who's really their big threat, 6 for 62. Aiden Mizell had a touchdown. Florida had 386 yards, 66 yards total offense.
Mhm.
And they were 6 for 17 on third down. They ran seven. They ran more plays than LSU, but the 5 turnovers did them in.
Yep. That, and they have not been good in the red zone. Florida is, and that's kind of a Billy Napier staple that they can move the ball all the way down the field and then not walk away with points. And something that they clearly need to address. VB3 is such an interesting story. His dad, Vernell, played with my husband, and his grandfather played with my dad. And he is a beast. And there is very few times in the history of Florida football that a true freshman has started, let alone been your wide receiver one. And that is where he is right now. Trey Wilson has, his number hasn't really been called much in this offense, which is kind of confusing because he's an
Yeah, I was
incredible
surprised. I
talent.
know, no, Eugene Wilson. I'm surprised what's happening with him.
I mean, he's on the field, they're just not looking his way, which is interesting and kind of crazy because he is incredibly good. Florida's wide receivers are actually an
Yes,
incredibly talented group.
yes,
We're
they
not
are.
currently taking advantage of their talent, but if DJ puts it together, makes the correct reads, Florida has the athletic ability to score a lot of points. They
Oh
just
yeah.
have not done that this
No,
season.
no, they haven't done it. It's outside of the Long Island game.
Right.
Really. I mean, but look at the defense. George Gums Jr.
Hmm.
Got Miles Graham, Sharif Denson, Dejon Johnson. See, what I was impressed with Florida's defense last week, Ali, is they held LSU to 96 yards rushing and 10 first downs and 4 for 14 on third down. And they had 52 total plays and they had an interception. And yet they don't, yes, their defense is carrying them, but their offense hasn't.
This is a playoff caliber defense. They've given up 2 touchdowns in 3 games,
Yeah.
which is crazy when you think about the fact that we lost the last 2 games. Unfortunately, Florida's going to be without Caleb Banks, who did play in that LSU
Yeah,
game
very
and broke
sad to
his
see
foot.
that.
We just saw in the injury report last night that George Gubbs Jr. is also out. Those are our 2 biggest weapons on our defensive line. And the week before, LJ McCray broke his foot. So
Mm,
that's a pretty deep defense. But
yes.
they're battered right now.
Yeah, they're getting and not to mention they're facing a powerhouse in Miami this week, like I said, in Hard Rock. Special teams did pretty well last week. But I look at the return game, I mean on special teams. I mean, look, this is the biggest threat they have is BB3 back there.
Yeah.
And
And I'm hoping they will take advantage of it. Unfortunately, another hallmark of Billy Napier teams is that they don't take special teams all that seriously. And if you're going to play really close games, which Florida has played in a lot of over the last 3.5 seasons, you really need to take special teams seriously and take an advantage where you can. VB3 returning punts and kickoffs is a huge advantage.
yeah, prepping going down to Hard Rock Saturday night, 7:30 on ABC. How is UF preparing for dealing with Carson Beck and the Miami offense? How are they preparing for that?
UF is really familiar with Carson Beck.
Yes,
And
from
Carson
Georgia.
Beck did not play well against Florida last year with Georgia. And I contend had DJ Lagway not gotten hurt, Florida would have beaten
I think
Georgia.
so
And
too.
I do think that they are going to hope to disrupt him enough to force him to make some mistakes. Florida's defense is very good. I'm
Yes,
interested to see what happens in the trenches. I think I mean, you would know better than me, but
yeah,
from an
all
outside
line.
perspective, I think Miami's trenches are the strongest part of their team. I think they're
Yes.
incredibly impressive. They're every bit as good of these defenses, I mean, that we see in the SEC. They're better than LSU. They're better than the defense we saw last week.
Mhm.
So how does Florida's offense and defensive line stack up against them? That's going to tell you a lot. But I do think they're hoping to disrupt Beck enough to force him to make some mistakes.
Yeah, what is the most intriguing one-on-one matchup you want to see in this game? What's the most intriguing?
I'm intrigued by Florida's wide receivers against Miami's secondary. I
Mhm.
think that is one of the only position groups where we can point to and say, I think Florida has an advantage there.
Mhm.
Florida's wide receivers haven't been particularly productive this year, but that is because DJ Lagway hasn't played particularly well.
No.
They're actually incredibly talented if they can get some separation and he plays the DJ Lagway of last year as opposed to the DJ Lagway of the last couple of
Say like the
weeks.
final 5 games.
Yeah, I mean, I think they could put some points up.
Yeah, the Canes receiving core against the UF corners in McLean, Moore, and Denson. What are you looking for in that matchup?
Um, UF's secondary needs to take a step forward. I think they've been okay this year. They've been decent. The defense as a whole has been phenomenal, but I credit that more to the linebackers and the defensive line than the secondary. But Miami has a great wide receiving core. These are some guys that don't
Tony.
have a ton of experience,
Hmm.
and they're going to need to play above where they have. McLean is such an interesting story.
Yeah.
And he's really come on very strong for the Gators. He is an incredible hard hitter, a good tackler, and he's a disruptor.
Yeah, we've heard all about the star players, Brown, Lagway, VB3, but who is a less heralded player for UF that could have a massive impact in this game?
That's a great question. I think if Jake Slaughter, Florida center, plays like he's capable of, that sets the tone for that entire line, and that's important because then we can establish the run. And I think Miles Graham at linebacker for Florida is a dog. He is so intense. He's an old school football player. He's Ernest Graham's son, who is a Florida running back, and He is just an old school, hard-nosed football player, loves to hit, gets mad on the sidelines, and he's a difference maker.
Yeah, I've looked at Rob Sale, the offensive line coach.
Mhm.
How are they preparing his offensive tackles, Jones and Barber, to deal with those edge rushers in Bain and Mesidor?
That is a great question. Florida has two offensive line coaches, and somehow they can't
Yeah.
even prevent, procedural penalties from happening. So I'm interested to see Florida rotates offensive linemen
Mm-hmm.
a ton more than the average team, and almost a puzzling amount. And I think they're trying to make sure they stay fresh, but I find it somewhat disruptive. So I'm interested to see if the struggles that the offensive line has had the last couple of weeks, which this is a unit that was ranked by pretty much every media publication as a top five unit, so they've underperformed. I'm interested to see if they change that strategy a little bit. I do think you kind of got to leave these guys in here and let them get into a rhythm, and that could go a long way in helping. But I don't know that you're going to stop Bane. I think that you are maybe going to be able to slow him down at times or try to mitigate a little bit, but he's too good of a player to think that Florida's going to stop him.
Now remember, we didn't have Bain last year after the first
Mhm.
quarter up in
Right.
Gainesville, and Miami still won going. We want still
Yeah.
going away up there.
Yeah, I
Keith,
think Florida's defensive line was a different defensive line the second half of the season than the
yeah,
first half of the season, and
yeah,
I think that was a huge difference.
yeah, no question about that. Single most important factor for UF to win this game, besides not turning it over 5 times, is it controlling the line of scrimmage, winning the turnover battle, or something else entirely?
It's controlling the line of scrimmage, and it's DJ Lagway playing better overall. I mean, I don't expect, even if he doesn't play well, I don't expect that he throws five interceptions, but he's got to play better than just not throwing five interceptions. That's like the floor. I need to see his downfield vision. I need to see him make good decisions. I need to see him, make the right reads. And he's capable of these things, which is kind of, I think, the largest part of why it's so frustrating to Gator fans right now.
Yeah, I think. Listen, this team could easily be 3-0. Let's not kid
Yeah.
ourselves. They've lost 2 games by a grand total of 13 points.
Yeah.
Of two to 12 points. I'm sorry, 12 points. I mean, this team. Our fans are saying, "Hey, that's going to be a desperate team coming to Hard Rock, and that's a dangerous team." And we
It
know
is.
Florida is very dangerous, and maybe it's probably going to be the last time we play Florida for a very long time with the new SEC schedule coming out.
Yeah, I know, and I hate that, and I love this rivalry, and I think it's fun, and I think it should happen more often than it does. And it does scare me that, like, shoot, is Florida going to walk away with a loss and then not see this team for 20 years? That stings. Um, I think this is a dangerous team. I'm not sure that they can change that much from one week to the other. I hope, obviously, that they will. But we saw last year Florida with their back against the wall, kind of circle the wagons and come out doing a 180. And the second half of Florida's season looked very different than the first half, and we were all kind of leaving Billy for dead at that point. So even though it does look very hopeless right now for Florida, we've seen this team do crazy things in the past.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Look, let me ask you this: do you have a gut feeling on how this one will shake out, and what's your reasoning?
Yeah, I think Miami wins. My score prediction that I did on my show was 21-10. I think this defense is incredible for Florida. And so while I think Miami will get some points, I think that it's the best defense that Miami has faced. It might be the best defense that they will face. And I think that they will keep it respectable. I think there's a decent chance that out of those 10 points, some of them are scored because of the defense, for
Hmm.
Florida, honestly. I will be shocked if Florida is able to really get their offense going after what I saw last week against a defense that I think is better than the LSU defense we saw.
Wow, Ali, I'm going to say this: Florida scares me. That's a dangerous team. We've had the thing here called the Mario Special. He
Mhm.
had that at Oregon, and yes, we've had games like that the last couple of years. Really, at the
Mhm.
end, we did fire Lance Guidry last year
Yep.
after the 3 bad losses.
Yep.
I have to think if this is if the Mario special talk goes away for good, it needs to be in starting in this game. Florida's dangerous. We know Lagway's not going to throw 5 picks again, but I feel our running game with Fletcher, Lyle, Brown, and then I think Beck with a better offensive line, I think is too much for Florida. I think we get to Lagway, we force mistakes. I think Miami wins. I'm going to say Miami 28. Florida 17.
Okay.
That's what I'm going with.
I can definitely see a score similar to that. I think that you maybe have slightly more respect for our offense at the moment than I do. But I think it's going to be a battle. I think these teams, these kids all know each other. This is a huge game for recruiting. If you are going to be successful at Florida, Florida State, or Miami, you are going to win the recruiting battle in the state of Florida. That stadium will have more than 80 high school recruits that are
Yes.
interested in both programs. And really, these programs are somewhat mirror images of each other. Both coaches in year four, both coaches have recruited at a similar clip. Both coaches have had, lost some games they shouldn't along the way. And so this will be very telling to those recruits whose trajectory really is up and who is probably going to be making a change. And, my gut tells me it's going to be Florida that's going to be
Yeah.
making a change.
With Billy Napier, speaking of that, with Billy Napier being on the hot seat, I mean, has there been any talk? I know the fans want him gone, and I figure if he loses this game, as many think he will there be do you expect a change, or the Strickland wait till after the season or they put enough
So
pressure on Strickland to can Billy?
I don't think even if Florida loses this game that they fire him after this game. I think, in the summer when we're sitting and looking at our schedule and trying to see what we think that it's going to shake out at. I had said 9-3. I think that's pretty similar to what most Florida pundits said. And Miami was one of those games that people were circling as it could be one of those three losses. We're looking at LSU, Miami, Texas, and Georgia, thinking that the
Biggest four.
losses come out of those, right? And so I don't think that you fire him after you lose to a team that you thought there was a decent chance you were going to lose to no matter
Mhm.
what. And the other thing is, I have always maintained that he's got to win eight to keep his
Mhm.
job. And from what I've been told, that's what the Florida brass thinks too. So I don't know that a move happens until that's no longer mathematically possible,
Yeah.
which is soon. It's just not yet. In my opinion, if Florida drops Miami and they drop Texas and they drop Texas A&M, it happens after Texas
Yeah.
A&M.
And
If I
when
was
is the
to
bye
bet it.
week? When is your
The
bye
bye
week?
week is actually next week. So Florida plays Miami. They have a bye, and then Texas comes to Gainesville.
Yeah.
Um, but again, I don't think you fire a coach for losing to a team that you thought at best was going to be a
No.
toss-up
No.
game no matter what.
I think people think after the second bye
Mhm.
would be the time to
Yes,
pull the
I
trigger.
think so. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
so. So I mean, we're talking
Down the
late
road.
October probably,
Yeah.
if it happens.
Yeah, so anyway, to send our audience home, Ali, what's the best way for listeners to connect with you or follow your work? And any final thoughts you want to leave our audience with?
Okay, well, I love this rivalry. I think this is so fun. I encourage Miami fans, find me on social media. I love engaging with all of you. On X, it's at Allie_Peak. And on YouTube, my channel is called A Peek Inside Gator Football.
Okay, great, great. Ali, thank you so much for joining us. Greatly appreciate it. Enjoy the game Saturday night. Like I said, I'm heading to Fort Lauderdale tomorrow, and we will talk again soon.
Sounds like a plan.
Thank you.